Ladies and gentlemen, today we delve into a topic that stirs the deepest chambers of the human heart. Signs from heaven. How God introduces your soulmate secretly. The journey to finding a soulmate is not merely a quest for companionship, but a divine adventure orchestrated by God Himself. While the world may reduce love to chance encounters or random chemistry, those who walk by faith understand that God's hand is at work, often in ways unseen, drawing two souls together with purpose and intention. When we explore the concept of soulmates from a divine perspective, we must begin with the foundational truth that God is the ultimate designer of all relationships. The Creator, who crafted the heavens and the earth with meticulous detail, also weaves the intricate tapestry of human connections. He is not a God of randomness, but of intentionality. Every relationship, whether fleeting or lifelong, plays a role in His divine blueprint. Among these connections, the introduction of a soulmate stands out as a profoundly intentional act by God. To understand how God introduces a soulmate, we must first comprehend the purpose behind relationships. God created human beings with an innate need for connection, not just with Him, but with one another. In Genesis 2:18, God declared, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." This statement reflects God's understanding of human needs and His desire to provide a relationship that complements and completes. The word helper in Hebrew, izeh, implies not just assistance, but strength, support, and partnership. This divine intention is not limited to romantic relationships, but finds its ultimate expression in the soulmate connection, a partnership that reflects God's love, unity, and purpose. The story of Adam and Eve is a perfect illustration of God's divine design. Adam did not wander the earth searching for his soulmate. Instead, God orchestrated the meeting. He caused Adam to sleep, symbolizing rest and trust in God's process. While Adam rested, God fashioned Eve and brought her to him. This act of divine introduction was not by accident, but a clear example of how God, in His timing and method, brings two people together. The introduction of a soulmate is often hidden within the normalcy of life, yet it is rooted in a divine agenda. Beyond Adam and Eve, the Bible is rich with examples of God's hand in orchestrating relationships. The story of Isaac and Rebekah is another powerful demonstration of divine design. Abraham's servant, tasked with finding a wife for Isaac, prayed for a sign, and God responded with precision. When Rebekah came to draw water and offered to serve both the servant and his camels, it was more than hospitality. It was a fulfillment of a divine sign. God did not leave this important introduction to chance. He guided the process through prayer, wisdom, and clear signs. In the same way, God designs our paths to intersect with our soulmate's path, often without our conscious awareness. What appears to be a coincidence is frequently divine choreography. You might find that shared passions, similar life experiences, or even trials have uniquely prepared you to connect with someone whose life story complements yours. God uses these elements to draw soulmates together, allowing their lives to blend seamlessly into His divine plan. However, recognizing this divine design requires spiritual sensitivity. Many miss their soulmate not because God has not introduced them, but because they are not spiritually attuned to see His hand at work. It is essential to cultivate a relationship with God, seeking His guidance in all aspects of life, including relationships. Through prayer, studying the Scriptures, and staying connected to the Holy Spirit, believers can sharpen their discernment to recognize when God is introducing their soulmate. God's design for relationships also includes purpose. A soulmate relationship is not just for companionship, but for advancing God's kingdom. The connection between two people divinely joined often goes beyond personal happiness. It serves a greater purpose, whether it's building a family, impacting a community, or supporting one another's spiritual journey. When God introduces your soulmate, it is not merely to fill a void, but to align two destinies for His glory. In conclusion, the divine design of relationships is a testament to God's intentionality. He has a purpose for every connection, especially the one He ordains as your soulmate. When we understand this truth, we shift from a mindset of striving to find someone to a posture of readiness to receive the person God has prepared for us. By trusting in His design, we allow God to work behind the scenes, guiding us to our soulmate in His perfect way and timing. The journey may not always be clear, but with faith and discernment, the divine design will unfold beautifully, leading to a relationship that is not only fulfilling, but also eternally significant. When it comes to the divine introduction of a soulmate, God often operates not through thunderous proclamations or grand displays, but through subtle signs and gentle whispers. His methods are neither forceful nor glaringly obvious. Instead, they require a discerning heart and a quiet spirit to recognize them. Much like the prophet Elijah, who did not find God in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in the gentle whisper, 1 Kings 19:12, we too must learn to perceive God's signals in the quiet moments of life. One of the most profound ways God introduces a soulmate is through a deep and unexplainable sense of peace. When God is orchestrating a connection, He often accompanies it with an inner calm that transcends circumstances. It is not the absence of questions or the guarantee of a flawless relationship, but rather a profound sense of being in alignment with His will. This peace acts as a compass, pointing us toward a person who complements our journey and aligns with our God-given purpose. Another subtle sign is the natural flow of connection. When God introduces your soulmate, the relationship may develop with a sense of ease and authenticity. While all relationships require effort, there is a grace that accompanies divine connections. Conversations flow naturally, shared values emerge, and mutual respect forms the foundation. The relationship may bypass superficial stages and quickly move into depth and substance. It feels as if you have known each other longer than you have, as if your souls recognize each other. This is not merely a human feeling, but often a spiritual witness to a divine appointment. God also uses circumstances to signal the introduction of a soulmate. The timing of your meeting may seem serendipitous, but in truth it is sovereign. You may cross paths during a season of personal growth, healing, or when pursuing your purpose. These divine intersections often occur when you are not actively searching for love, but are fully engaged in living out your God-given calling. The story of Ruth and Boaz is a perfect example. Ruth was simply going about her daily duty of gleaning in the fields when God orchestrated a life-changing encounter. What seemed ordinary became extraordinary because of God's hand in it. In addition to circumstances, God may speak through the voices of wise counsel when those you trust, spiritual mentors, family members, or close friends, affirm the connection. This could be a divine confirmation. God often uses others to validate what He is already speaking to your spirit. Proverbs 11:14 reminds us, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety." When those who know you well and love God discern a positive alignment, it may well be a sign of divine introduction. God also speaks through Scripture and prayer. Sometimes, during moments of devotion, a verse may leap off the page, providing clarity or assurance. You might find yourself reading stories of divine partnerships, like Mary and Joseph, Priscilla and Aquila, or Isaac and Rebekah, and sensing God's still, small voice indicating His plan for you. During prayer, God may place a particular person on your heart consistently, not as a fleeting thought, but as a steady impression, These spiritual nudges are often God's way of guiding your attention and affections. Furthermore, the fruit of the Spirit can serve as a subtle sign of a soulmate. When God introduces a soulmate, the relationship should bear good fruit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5:22-23. If the connection leads you closer to God, encourages your spiritual growth, and fosters a deeper love for others, it is likely a sign that God is at work. Conversely, if a relationship consistently produces confusion, strife, or draws you away from your faith, it is wise to pause and seek God's clarity. Lastly, God often uses divine coincidences as signs. You might repeatedly find yourself in the same places as this person, share mutual connections, or have life experiences that intertwine in remarkable ways. These patterns are often not random, but orchestrated by God to draw attention to his plan. Like puzzle pieces, these moments come together to reveal a bigger picture of what God is arranging. In conclusion, recognizing God's subtle signs requires spiritual sensitivity and patience. It involves not only looking for outward confirmations, but also listening to the stillness of your own spirit. By staying connected to God through prayer, worship, and studying his word, you fine-tune your ability to discern his leading. When you recognize his signs, you step into the beautiful unfolding of a divine love story, one that is written by God, filled with purpose, and marked by his perfect timing. One of the most challenging yet crucial aspects of discovering your soulmate through divine orchestration is understanding the role of timing and exercising patience. God's timing is not merely an element of circumstance, but a profound part of his divine strategy. It is in the waiting that God often prepares not only the path, but also the people. While the world often rushes into relationships driven by emotions, societal pressures, or fleeting desires, those who trust in God must learn to wait on his perfect timing, a timing that aligns hearts, purposes, and destinies in a way that human effort cannot replicate. A powerful biblical example of divine timing is the story of Jacob and Rachel. Jacob worked for 14 years to marry Rachel, enduring hardship and deception, yet his love and patience did not waver. What sustained him was a vision of the promise, an understanding that the wait would be worth it. This story teaches us that sometimes the waiting period is not about delay, but about development. God uses time to refine our character, build our faith, and teach us the value of what we are waiting for. It is in these waiting seasons that God often removes impurities from our hearts, heals past wounds, and aligns our desires with his will. Patience during this period is not passive but active. It involves maintaining hope, continuing in prayer, and remaining obedient to God's current assignments. When we rush ahead of God's timing, we risk entering relationships prematurely. A premature relationship, no matter how well-intentioned, often leads to pain and confusion. The story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar is a sobering reminder. In their impatience to fulfill God's promise of a son, Abraham and Sarah took matters into their own hands, leading to Ishmael's birth. While God still blessed Ishmael, the situation brought strife and complications. This narrative underscores the danger of substituting God's perfect will with our own timing. The waiting period is also a time of alignment. God is not only preparing you, but also preparing your soulmate. While you might be in a season of growth, your future partner could be in a season of healing or discovery. God, in his wisdom, ensures that both individuals are aligned spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. This synchronization creates a strong foundation for the relationship when the introduction finally happens. When God brings two people together in his timing, there is a natural harmony, and evidence of his hand at work. Moreover, patience during this season reflects trust in God's goodness. Psalm 27:14 encourages us to wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Trusting in God's timing means believing that he knows what is best and that he has our best interests at heart. It requires letting go of control and surrendering our timelines to his sovereign will. This surrender is not a sign of weakness, but of profound faith. He says, Lord, I trust that your plans for my life are better than anything I could arrange on my own. There is also a practical side to patience. Instead of focusing solely on the arrival of a soulmate, God calls us to focus on becoming the best version of ourselves. This is a time to pursue passions, fulfill purposes, and deepen our relationship with God. When you are active in God's calling for your life, you often meet your soulmate while doing what you were created to do. Ruth met Boaz while working in the fields, not while waiting passively. Her diligence positioned her for divine introduction. Another critical aspect of patience is avoiding the temptation to settle. When waiting becomes difficult, the enemy often introduces counterfeits, relationships that seem good but are not God's best. These counterfeits might appear fulfilling initially, but often lead to distraction and derailment from your divine purpose. Patience equips you with the wisdom to differentiate between what is permissible and what is truly divine. It helps you hold out for the person who will not just share your life, but will also enhance your journey toward God's intended purpose. In conclusion, timing and patience are not barriers but bridges to receiving God's best. They teach us to trust, to prepare, and to align ourselves with his greater plan. When you embrace God's timing, you allow him to craft a love story that is not only beautiful, but also eternal. As you wait, remember that God is not withholding your soulmate from you. He is preparing both of you for a relationship that will glorify him, fulfill your purpose, and bring joy that surpasses understanding. When it comes to finding a soulmate through divine orchestration, perhaps the most critical aspect is embracing faith and trusting in God's process. Faith, in this context, is not merely a belief in God's ability to bring a soulmate into your life, but a deep, abiding trust in his wisdom, timing, and methods. It is the assurance that God is not only able, but also willing to introduce you to the person he has prepared for you. Trust, on the other hand, is the practical expression of that faith, living each day with the confidence that God is actively working behind the scenes, even when nothing appears to be happening. Embracing faith begins with understanding that God is inherently good. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us of this truth. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. This verse is not just a promise, but a revelation of God's heart toward us. He desires good things for his children, and that includes relationships. When God introduces a soulmate, it is always with the intention of bringing growth, joy, and fulfillment. Not just in a worldly sense, but in alignment with his kingdom purpose. However, faith must often be practiced in the midst of uncertainty. There are seasons when the promise of a soulmate feels distant. You may see others enter into beautiful relationships while you remain in waiting. During these times, doubt and discouragement can creep in, but this is precisely when faith becomes essential. Hebrews 11:01 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In the context of waiting for a soulmate, this means holding on to the promise even when there is no visible evidence. It involves trusting God's character more than your circumstances. One of the key components of trusting God's process is surrendering control. Many times, the desire to find a soulmate can lead to striving, whether through forcing connections, compromising values, or rushing into relationships out of impatience. True trust means releasing the need to orchestrate your love story and allowing God to write it instead. Proverbs 3:05-6 advises, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Trusting God requires a shift from self-reliance to divine dependence, from planning your own path to allowing him to guide your steps. Trust also involves discerning the difference between a delay and a denial. When God does not immediately introduce your soulmate, it does not mean he has forgotten or rejected your desire. Instead, he may be orchestrating circumstances, refining character, or aligning destinies in a way that only he can see. It is often in the waiting that God prepares both you and your future partner for the relationship he has planned. Just as a gardener knows the right season to plant and harvest, God knows the perfect time to bring two hearts together. Faith in God's process also calls for gratitude and contentment in the present season. Instead of focusing on what is missing, you can cultivate a spirit of thankfulness for what God is doing now. This shift in perspective transforms waiting into preparation. It allows you to grow spiritually, pursue passions, and build a life rooted in purpose. Many times, God introduces a soulmate not when we are searching for love, but when we are immersed in living out our calling. This principle is evident in the story of Rebecca, who was simply fulfilling her daily responsibilities when God orchestrated her meeting with Isaac. Her faithfulness in the ordinary led to an extraordinary divine connection. Moreover, embracing faith involves seeking God continually through prayer and his word. Prayer is not only a way to present your desires to God, but also a means to align your heart with his will. As you pray for your future soulmate, you invite God into the process, asking for wisdom, discernment, and patience. The Bible offers numerous promises about God's guidance and provision, and meditating on these scriptures strengthens your faith. When doubts arise, returning to God's word helps anchor your heart in his truth, keeping you steady amid uncertainty. An essential aspect of trusting God's process is being open to his unexpected methods. Sometimes God introduces a soulmate in ways that defy human logic. The person may not match your preconceived notions, or the meeting may happen under surprising circumstances. When Philip encountered the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8, it was a divinely orchestrated meeting that seemed random on the surface, but fulfilled a greater purpose. Similarly, divine introductions often come wrapped in the ordinary, requiring spiritual sensitivity to recognize God's hand at work. Finally, embracing faith means holding on to hope even when the journey is long. The story of Abraham and Sarah is a testament to this truth. They waited decades for the promise of a child, and despite moments of doubt, their faith ultimately led to the fulfillment of God's promise. Just as God was faithful to them, he remains faithful today. His promises do not expire, and his plans are not thwarted by time. Your faith in his process positions you to receive his best, not only in the form of a soulmate, but in every area of life. In conclusion, embracing faith and trust in God's process is both a journey and a discipline. It requires a heart surrendered to God's will, a mind grounded in his truth, and a spirit anchored in his promises. When you walk in faith, you move from anxiety to anticipation, from striving to resting, and from hoping to knowing that God's plan for your love story is not only perfect, but also a reflection of his profound love for you. As you hold fast to this truth, you set the stage for God to introduce your soulmate in a way that is marked by his peace, purpose, and providence. As we draw this journey to a close, let us take a moment to reflect on the profound truth that God is intimately involved in every aspect of our lives, including the introduction of our soulmate. Throughout this discourse, we have explored how God subtly orchestrates divine connections, the importance of discerning his signs, the critical role of timing and patience, and the unwavering faith required to trust his process. Each of these elements serves as a reminder that God is not only the author of love, but also the master architect of our relationships. Finding your soulmate is not merely about fulfilling a personal longing, but about stepping into a divine partnership that amplifies your purpose and glorifies God. When God introduces your soulmate, it is not an isolated event, but a beautiful chapter in the grander story he is writing for your life. It is a connection designed to draw you closer to him, to refine your character, and to create a union that reflects his love to the world. Embracing this journey requires patience, discernment, and an unshakable faith in God's goodness. It demands that we move beyond worldly expectations and cultivate a deeper spiritual awareness of God's guidance. It is about recognizing that God's timing is perfect, that his signs are often subtle but profound, and that his process is not only trustworthy but also transformative. As you move forward, may you do so with a heart open to God's leading, a spirit attuned to his whispers, and a mind anchored in his promises. May you find joy in the waiting, wisdom in the seeking, and peace in knowing that God's plan for your love story is far greater than anything you could script on your own. And when that divine introduction comes, when God brings your soulmate into your life, may you receive it with gratitude, nurture it with love, and steward it with the deep awareness of the divine gift it truly is.